Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Landon Kahn. Thanks, Landon.
Thanks for having me. Excited to have this chat.
Yeah, same here. I'll let you do an introduction because there's no way I will do it as good as what you would.
Thanks, Anthony. So my background, 17 years in building and growing businesses. Started out in a startup. I was the third employee at about 300K revenue. Grew that to about 100 people, over 60 million in revenue. From there, moved to another business as CEO, built that, and then facilitated transaction there and kind of stepped out from there a couple of years ago. And since then, I've launched a consultancy called Sol Sombra, where we help businesses with growth and strategy, as well as sustainability. And so the businesses that I've built and grown have been in the sustainable industry. So that's my background as well. And then I also am quite involved in the startup ecosystem in Australia as a angel investor, mentor, and advisor.
Okay, quite the variety there, but there is the common
Yeah,
consistency of a growth across all of those. So, what was that
certainly.
journey like from 3 employees to 100 at that startup?
It was an amazing experience. It was the primary business was in solar, and so we call it the solar coaster. It really had a lot of ups and downs, and so it taught a lot in resilience and grit and how important that is in building and growing a business. And there were a lot of times where it felt like the world was on our shoulders in terms of the executive team and trying to, almost kind of, because it was a very nascent industry when we started, kind of cutting our way through the jungle, making a path for others.
Yep.
But it was also just, an experience that I wouldn't kind of change and learn so much in and proud of what we achieved.
So, was it like solar installation, and then what was sort of your role in growing that?
Yeah. So when I started as the third employee, is kind of doing whatever was needed, and I actually, after a short while, got the nickname the Wolf after Winston Wolfe in Pulp Fiction. It was just the
The
guy that
fixer.
would get things done. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. It was like, okay, we need to do this, and I remember we sold a sustainability piece of work, like writing a sustainability policy for quite a large company, like a well-known brand. And the founder came to me and said, "Okay, we need to do this. Can you do this?" I'm like, "Well, I've never done that before, but I'll make it happen." And we kind of built this, sustainability policy and delivered it to the client, and they were super happy with it. But primarily, what I was focused on was initially marketing, and then that grew into to growth, which covered sales, marketing, and strategy. My title for a lot of it was Chief Growth Officer.
Mhm.
So working really closely with the CEO, the founder, on kind of just building and growing the business. And it was, as I said, like we were in a nascent industry, so a lot of it was having to, you know, come up with ideas, test things, come up with products or solutions, and put them out into the market and see kind of what response we would get. And that's kind of a lot of how we built the company, was trying to be innovative and bringing things out that would make it easier for people to, uptake solar.
Okay, so that would have been challenging and probably exciting at the same time because you're breaking into a new market, trying to explore what works, what doesn't, but also probably educating as well at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of both the challenges and opportunities. So when you sit in front of someone and um, they don't know what you're talking about, building that rapport and relationship, educating them. But then that was also difficult from a sales point of view because you've got to take people through that process. And I actually remember there was one client that we had that in the first meeting, they basically referred to solar as kind of, solar salespeople are snake oil salespeople, um, and kind of kicked us out of the office. And they ended up, it was about 8 months that it took to get this project through, and it was a $1 million plus project. At the time, it was one of the biggest projects in Australia.
Hmm.
And then fast forward about 6 months later, they told me that they were telling their suppliers that they had to get solar, um, because they couldn't put their prices up because of increasing energy prices. Like they had to do something about it themselves, not pass it on
Okay.
to them. So that was a really interesting process going from, like what you're doing is, a load of BS to being an evangelist for what we were doing.
Yeah, that's the kind of turnaround you want to see, especially when you're in the growth and marketing side. You know what you're doing is working then, especially if they're
Yeah,
promoting
exactly.
your service or your offering as well.
Yeah.
So from that business, you then moved into a CEO role you mentioned. How was
Yeah.
that
So
transition? Because that would have been a bit different.
because I was involved in the startup for such a long time, I was 13 years in total. Um, I was quite intricately involved in a lot of the business as it grew, and we had a senior leadership team, and so I was across everything that was happening in the business.
Hmm.
Um, then after that, when I moved into this smaller company, I basically took a lot of that experience that I had, and applied it to the smaller company. Uh, but it was a really great experience to have more control over the development of the different kind of pillars of the business, from growth to operations to finance. Um, and so it was leveraging a lot. But it was a really interesting experience. And that was also probably one of the challenges there was it had a very flat structure. And so when I joined, there was about 20-ish people. Um, and by the end, it was about 50-ish people. And we tried to keep it as flat as possible. So I would have, a first year apprentice coming to me as the CEO and, wanting to have a chat about stuff that they were doing or issues. So that was probably the biggest change, was having such a big kind of team that would all, open door policy come to chat with me.
And that was probably a good culture you had then there as well, because then it's friendly. Everyone can get along. They don't have layers of managers of managers of managers to be able to try and bubble through or voice issues, and you can actually, from your perspective, you probably get to issues quite quickly and have your finger on the pulse of what's actually happening day to day. You're not so far removed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's pro like to any kind of structure of a business, there's pros and cons. But that's what we were trying to create, this collaborative kind of culture where people could take responsibility, and try to be autonomous, and have open lines of communication.
So was that a different industry
No, that was
altogether?
the same industry as well. Yeah,
Okay, so you could then draw from the experience. It wasn't sort of trying to map what you learnt from one and how does it apply to a different.
correct. Yeah.
So,
Subsequently, in the consulting side of stuff, I have done that. But yeah, for those two businesses, it was relatively similar.
so what are some of the sort of key takeaways you took along that journey then that led you to move into onto your own consulting side?
Um, so I'd say there'd be three key things. One was around growth, and one, how challenging it can be, but how putting in place kind of tried and tested playbooks and having an iterative and experimental kind of approach to growth, um, is definitely a kind of good strategy to embed. The second thing would be around kind of the ups and downs of running a business and being able to kind of plan for those. Um, and then the third thing is around people, and how important people are to driving a business, and trying to get the best out of them, and kind of took those three things and, yeah, work with clients in different ways, but kind of always having that, kind of umbrella thinking across what we do.
So, having that mindset, then are you enjoying more the consulting now, or sort of the experiences you've had in the past? Because I know it's quite different when you're out on your own and you have to manage
Yeah.
everything.
It's kind of like asking who's your favorite child. Uh, no, it's both. Both have been really interesting, and enjoyed the kind of, building and running. But I'm also now really enjoying consulting, working with different clients from a point of view that, I'm able just to leverage that experience with different businesses, and seeing the kind of change or evolution. I really enjoy that. Then the other side is it's just leveraging the things that I come across or learn. Whereas, running a business, you wear kind of one hat, you're always thinking about that. Whereas from a consulting point of view, I've got to wear different hats, think of different businesses. And so, for example, meeting someone at a networking event, I was recently at a conference, and at an event met someone. And so just in that conversation, I was thinking about, four or five different opportunities at the same time with that kind of person. And that's really interesting. Okay, there's so many different angles to just almost every interaction or information or opportunity. So that is one of the things I really enjoy about consulting.
It's that problem solving aspect.
Yeah,
That's what I
the grey
find.
matter's always ticking over.
Yeah. So we're software consultants as we call it, but we through our DevReady process we try and really understand what a business is doing and where they want to be to see how the technology will support them, because the technology is just a tool along the journey of what they're trying to achieve. It's not the be all and end all of everything. So we really try to understand, and then you're solving problems along the way that they mention things that, oh, this isn't working or that's working, and then you try and just offer suggestions supplementary to what you're trying to do because you've heard of things or you've seen things that work and you can offer suggestions. So there's always that problem solving. It's a lot of putting a puzzle together with pieces from different boxes is how I
Yeah,
explain it.
definitely. And as you know the founder or the entrepreneurs more, you get to understand things and build that rapport and able to offer that different perspective. Again, like as a business executive or running a business, you've sometimes have blinkers on because you're just so focused on the day to day, and having someone that can give you that outside perspective and or even just kind of question your thinking, I always think is really beneficial to make sure that you're not just kind of missing the forest from the trees.
Yep. So in your current role, are you more focused on sort of like the growth and strategy, or is it more on the advice and advisory side?
Um, it's different for different clients. So we don't have like a cookie cutter, this is exactly what we're going to do for
Okay.
you, which is both a pro and a con, because we're able to really kind of work with clients and going, what do you need? And so in some projects, or some clients, it might be a specific project where it's like, okay, you're looking to enter this market, and we'll work with you and put together a go-to-market strategy. Other clients, it might be more of an advisory role where we kind of meet with them on a fortnightly basis, and we have kind of a structured approach to, you know, keep accountability within the business, keep things moving forward, and help them just kind of with their strategy and optimizing the business. Uh, and then other clients, we actually, get a bit more involved and kind of work with them on an ongoing basis, work with different team members just to optimize different areas of the business. It could be sales, it could be marketing, it could even be operations. So yeah, it's very different for different clients, but that's one of the things that we really love doing is kind of going, okay, well, what do you actually need? Kind of like a Venn diagram. What do you need? What are your opportunities, challenges? This is what we do. Okay, kind of this fits in the middle. Let's kind of work on that together.
Okay. So for some of the audience listening out there, we have like startup founders that are just getting off the ground and maybe testing a product in the market and then looking at doing getting towards that growth side. And then we may have established businesses that are testing new products or new services, looking to grow and scale their business. What's some advice you can give on sort of that growth and scale side from both those perspectives?
Yeah, good question. So my kind of founding strategy around growth is what I call test, learn, refine. And it doesn't matter if um, you have no customers, or you've got, a reasonable amount of customers, and you're looking to scale. Is in growth, there's no silver bullet that's like just do this and it's 100% going to work and that's all you have to do. And so it's around testing different things. So making sure that you've got the data before in terms of, well, you're not just going to throw spaghetti at the wall and hope something sticks, but there's something behind the strategy. Test it out, learn from it, and then if it was something that was positive and okay, well, we can see that this could work for the business, then to refine that and keep that iterative process. Because you look at, for example, the sales funnel. If you increase 1% on each of the areas of that compounding is pretty significant. So that's kind of the overarching strategy or kind of advice we'd give to any business is to take that approach.
And that wouldn't change regardless of what they're trying to do, whether it's a marketing campaign or a new product or service or
Yeah, I
a
mean,
way to
certain
perform a
things,
process.
yeah, certain things are harder to do that with. If you're selling a widget, right, that may be a little bit harder versus kind of if you're a SaaS business and it's much easier to, okay, well, if we change the product slightly or, change the design slightly. Um, but from a growth point of view, trying to generate, increased brand awareness, leads, the sales process, anything within that to be able to, yeah, test, learn, and refine. Doesn't really matter what you're doing or what stage you are, you can do that.
How would you go about sort of the process to sort of capture the results and then learn from them and like analyze them? Because a lot of people may have trouble in just trying to bring all the information together, or once they do have all the information, they don't know how to slice and dice it the right way to make the right decisions.
Yeah, good question. Again, it depends what you're doing. So, um, if you're doing like a billboard, right, the data that you're going to get from that is very different to doing, say, digital ads where you've got a lot of data. So it depends on what you're actually doing. Um, but you take away kind of the level of data that you can get. There's kind of two things that I would suggest. Um, One is what I call a pre-mortem. So let's say you go, okay, we want to do this growth initiative before you actually hit the go button on it, to sit down as a team and go, let's envision that it's gone wrong, and we've gotten terrible results. What's gone wrong? What's happened? Um, and kind of as if you're doing a post-mortem, like, someone's died, like how did they die? But you're doing that up front, and then like once you get the insights from that, kind of changing the approach to try and mitigate that potential. Then you do the initiative, as I said, test, learn, and then afterwards, whether you've got a lot of data or it's kind of you're taking inferences or kind of gut feel because you're unable to get a lot of data, sitting down and doing that post-mortem and saying, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, would we do this again, and what would we change if we're going to do it again? And there is, there's levels of insight that you can get. And so let's just take the billboard as an example. Like, the number of people that have seen that, you're not going to have a lot of that kind of data. There's, indicative stuff. But you'll understand, okay, did sales increase or did leads increase or, have we seen website traffic increase? And so looking at kind of before the campaign, going, what are the metrics that we want to try and understand? And then at the end of it going, okay, well, this is what we saw from it. And yeah, we felt that was successful or no, it wasn't. An example that was done years ago, this was really interesting. A business came up with, they were trying to generate, it was B2B, trying to generate opportunities, and they came up with getting their foot in the door. And so they actually sent like a fake foot, like a rubber foot, to different decision makers and
Okay.
said, hey, we're trying to get our foot in the door. And they actually got a pretty good response from that. But it didn't actually generate like any sales. So it was really good at kind of getting response, but no sales. And so that was something where they didn't continue it because there was quite a bit of effort involved. But that was, it was testing something. Let's say you come up with an idea, let's test it. And so it's kind of that mentality.
Okay, so it's really just starting, picking something and trying really. Because my next question was going to be, when there is only two or three people in the business, you may not necessarily know where to start. Because if you're a general startup, you're an expert in a certain field, or you've got an idea and you've just started, and you may not have the experience needed in the right seats. with the team that you have or on yourself. So it's really just starting something and setting some baseline to then measure against, I guess, or just monitoring to see if there is the outcome that you're after. So on the foot, yeah, you got a
Yeah,
lot of conversations potentially, but didn't convert.
yeah, exactly. And look, one of the other kind of key strategies that I suggest is around leverage. So that particular initiative, there wasn't a lot of leverage. It was time consuming. So if you can try focus on strategies that you can leverage and scale easily, that's always for me the first prize. Um, but it could have been like that initiative was really successful. And I actually read an article recently. I can't remember the name of the business, but they have been sending like customized gin bottles to their kind of key prospects,
Yep.
and I think they were saying it was $80 per bottle, and they've actually found that their best cost per acquisition, and they're expanding that strategy. So that actually something
Okay.
like that has worked for them. So it just depends. Another thing I'd say on kind of your point where three people in the business, you don't know a lot of this stuff is nowadays compared to when I was starting in kind of 2007, the to access kind of people with experience is so much easier. There's the kind of the different freelancing platforms, and there's a lot of fractional executives out there. So it is actually much easier to kind of bring in some expertise at a relatively low cost to help you with different things. And that's something else that I would recommend and suggest.
So one thing that's probably always a bit cautious when, from what conversations we've had with startups or small businesses, is they're very cautious of bringing in sort of like the consultants like that with expertise. What's something that you would advise to sort of question or look into to make sure they're the right person for you? Because you'd get this question asked to you quite frequently, I'm guessing as well.
Yeah. So you can obviously speak to, ask for references. Generally, people are not going to give bad references, but on those calls, you can ask really interesting questions.
Yep.
So I'd say that's the kind of first thing to do. And one of the strategies I do myself from like a reference point of view, and that's both from hiring people or working with different contractors or consultants, is to ask negative questions. And in terms of what that actually is so let's say there's a key thing, let's say attention to detail, right? Is a key thing that you need from this person. When you're talking to the reference, to ask a negative question, to say something like, look through the kind of interview process or just kind of the discovery process. There's been a few things that we've found that attention to detail is probably not up to where we need it to be. Is that something that you found as well, that the attention to detail wasn't great? And because it's a negative question, the, the person on the other end has to kind of justify and go, well, no, it's the attention to detail is fine, it's good, like no issues whatsoever. Versus if you just said, oh, how is there attention to detail? You're much more likely to get an honest answer if you kind of people have to will say, no, that's not actually an issue. And a lot of the times you find people, oh, actually, you know what? Like, yeah, there was this little bit or that little bit. So that's probably one thing I'd say
Okay.
to
I
do.
haven't heard of that approach before, but it does make sense because it makes the other person think about the response rather than try and like give a generic canned answer
Yeah,
off the top of their head.
exactly.
Okay, so that's an interesting approach. Our main thing when we're discussing with clients is you have to be able to get along with whoever you're working with because you're entering a relationship. It's not a single serving thing that you're going to go to this person. You're not getting a McDonald's order, for example. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's you're entering in a relationship. You're going to be there long term. You're trying to grow your business. You're bringing this person in to help you do whatever that is in whatever aspect of your business that you're trying to improve. So if you can't get along and you can't communicate, I think that's the first like deal breaker, and you probably agree with that. And then yeah,
100%.
understand, do they actually align to all the other requirements or needs that you have, and then that question approach is probably a good way to do it as well. Even just talking to the consultant and talking that way to make them break out of their standard responses that they would give, because we all have the standard things that we say.
Yeah, 100%. And as an example, I was working one of my clients. They were working on an initiative and had spent significant time and effort on it. and it was kind of a go no go point. And I asked them, because we had a good collaborative relationship, I was like, well, like, you've spent time and effort on this. Do you think now is the best time to do it? And they're like, yeah, look, we've spent time and effort. It should be good for the business. Let's go ahead with it. And because I had a good relationship, like, no, that's not what I'm asking. I was able to kind of just dive a bit deeper and kind of continue probing and kind of said, like, yes or no, do you think now is the best time for you to do this? Um, and they kind of thought and said, look, I don't think it's bad. Well, it's a yes or no. Like, think deeper. And like, no, it's not the best time to do it. That is a good point. And then kind of 6 months later, checked in with them and I said, do you think you made the right call? And they're like, yeah, we did make the right call not to do that. And it was because of that kind of relationship and we worked well together that, that was just a comfortable process. It wasn't kind of awkward. So totally agree with you on that.
And then in that situation, where you're comfortable, and you actually know the person that you're talking to. You know that it's like it's a surface level response. It's not. There's no decision process behind that in the immediate response. And that's why you dug in further.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the kind of people you need to support you. You need someone that's going to care about what they're doing, take pride in their work, and want to actually assist you with what you're trying to achieve. Not just someone who's there for the dollars that you're paying them at the time that you request things.
Yeah, if you can, show that to clients, it's like, I genuinely care for you as a person and for the business. I think that's the best way to build rapport, and to build that relationship and just it opens different opportunities for you. And I think if you really are a trusted advisor, confidant, or whatever it is, um, it's just you're stickier with clients, and that's kind of for me is always the way I want to build things.
Yeah, and I'm in alignment with that. It's you care about what you're trying to do. You take pride in your work, so you want to deliver outcomes, and you want to help the people you're working with. And
Yeah,
as a consultant, you have the choice of who you can work with as well. So that's another good thing as well, because you get to pick and choose the people you work with to try and make them succeed and actually enjoy what you're doing at the same time.
yeah, yeah. And then you give them as a reference, and they're like, you got to work with Landon. It's all somber, and if they ask questions about attention to detail, like, no, he's got great attention to detail. Don't worry about it.
They give you the glowing reviews, then
Yeah,
it's not a
yeah,
problem.
exactly.
So before we wrap up, is there sort of any other key advice you'd want to offer to anyone listening out there, or some key tips and strategies to how to get some growth or approach a decision and how to move in the right direction?
Yeah, good question. So, um, the a few things I would say is to understand your ICP, your ideal client. Where are they? Where are they getting information from? What are they doing? What are their real pain points or opportunities? And to just always kind of be thinking customer centricity. A few of my clients have kind of shifted that over the last little while, and they've seen some really significant growth. And so that's not necessarily about going, okay, going to get heaps and heaps of leads or opportunities, but it's really making sure that each opportunity that you have that is qualified, to really think about like what can you offer more to the clients and just really focus from their point of view. And that's one thing I'd say. The other thing I'd say is to make note of what your competitors are doing. And that doesn't always mean you should copy it, but just to be aware of what's happening, and to have that lens on, and in terms of going, okay, well, notice this competitor is continually doing this. That would suggest that it's probably working for them. Doesn't mean you should do it, but just to kind of have that understanding of what competitors are doing. And then the third thing would be kind of what I mentioned earlier, is doing a pre-mortem. So whenever you've kind of got a important decision or campaign or something you're going to kind of do within the business that potentially can go wrong, is to try and sit down and do that before you actually go ahead with it. and that helps to increase the likelihood of success.
It's a little bit of planning beforehand. We'll set you on the wrong path here. I'm made
Yeah.
guilty of just jumping into things too quickly, but there is a
Um,
difference in doing that, in planning something at least.
we all are, but look, it needs to be a balance, right? You can do too much planning, analysis paralysis. So it's got to be a good balance.
Yeah. And then maybe plan one thing, don't plan the next, and then just understand what sort of works or allows you to move quicker to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Landon, it's been a pleasure to speak to you today. Thanks for all the advice and the tips that you've shared. I'm sure there's some nuggets in there that someone listening will be able to take away. If anyone wants to reach out and find more about what you do and Solsana, I think
Sol
what was that?
Sombra.
Sol Sombra. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, about you and Sol Sombra. How can they do that?
Thanks. So I'm on LinkedIn, so Landon Kahn, and Kahn is spelled Kahn. So check me out on LinkedIn or to solsombra.co, our website. Those are the two best places.
It's been a pleasure to speak to you today, and thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was great.